All right, so I have here two mailers endorsing different ballot initiatives in California, basically telling me how I should vote. Now, the problem with this is, actually, we'll get to that in a minute here. First off, let me introduce myself for those who don't know me yet. My name is James Lee, and my channel is called 5149, where I talk about business and political topics from a truly independent perspective. Thanks for joining me today. This week's video is a simple yet important discussion about money and politics, specifically the corruptive influence that money has on politics. Today, I'd like to start the discussion with an excerpt from a video put out by the Federalist Society, which is, according to Wikipedia, an organization of conservatives and libertarians that advocates for textualist and originalist interpretation of the United States Constitution. I'm pointing that out just so everyone is aware and knows a little bit of the context before I roll into the clip, which I will do now.
Speech is speech, but most effective speech costs money. True, money isn't speech, but restricting the spending of money on speech does restrict speech. And that's why the court has said that Congress cannot make such laws. Those laws abridge the freedom of speech and thus violate the First Amendment.
So what we just watched was an excerpt from a video titled, "Is Money Speech?", where they claim that while money technically isn't speech, it does enable speech, so restricting spending actually disables speech. So this is the same logic that the Supreme Court used in the landmark Citizens United case in 2010, whereby the court ruled that corporations could spend unlimited sums of money on political campaigns. But here's the problem with that logic. If it costs money to engage in free speech, is speech really free? Like in practice, the goal of speech, I think, is to express an idea, but also it's equally important probably to have that idea you're expressing be heard. Let me put it this way. Actually, let me just demonstrate. Okay, so now I'm here in my car. Well, it's technically a truck, but anyways, I'm here alone. So if I'm here exercising my free speech, but no one's around to hear it, what good does that free speech do for me? You hear that, kids? The more money you have, the more speech you deserve. That YouTube comment from the video we just watched together is exactly right. I know it's sarcasm, but in practice, that's how it works. If the amount of speech is tied to the amount of money they have behind it, people with more money are then going to be the ones who are heard and who ultimately get to decide everything. And that leads to the exact situation we see in the US, where public opinion is almost entirely ignored because the wealthy and the corporations have a completely different agenda. And that's what I mean when I say money has a very corruptive influence on politics. We're in the midst of the most expensive election cycle in history, almost $11 billion spent in 2020 compared with about half that amount in 2016, according to Open Secrets. And about 3/4 of that is coming from large individual donors, political action committees, or dark money sources. And I think in the media, money is seen almost as a proxy for how legit of a candidate you are, or even as a source of bragging. But what they neglect to discuss, my guess is not by accident, is where the money is coming from and the negative effect that this money has on democracy. And of course, we have even elite publications like the New York Times writing that there is just no good evidence that campaign finance laws have any effect on actual corruption. Like what? I feel like anyone who says that is either a beneficiary of the current corporate system, or they're straight up BSing you, or is applying some kind of strict academic definition of corruption and ignoring what's going on in reality. So let me give you a couple of concrete examples. The first one is an article put out by the Brennan Center. When Congress was considering an unpopular tax reform package in 2017, Corey Bliss, the head of the Congressional Leadership Fund and close ally of House Speaker Paul Ryan, gave House Republicans an ultimatum. The group would not support members who voted against the bill. As the tax reform bill moved through Congress, senators and representatives were frank about their motivation to pass it to please donors. The Congressional Leadership Fund went on to be the highest spending super PAC in 2018, shelling out $138 million in support of GOP candidates. To me, that example is extremely telling. I know technically that's not outright illegal to do, but you can't tell me that that's not corruption in the sense that our representatives are openly admitting that the bill they're trying to pass isn't very popular, but they're going to do it anyway because their donors are threatening to withhold funding. Another example, if you remember these mailers, I started the conversation with these mailers at the beginning of the video. So I thought these mailers were weird because They're supposed to be from two different groups, but the formatting and endorsements are exactly the same. One is called the Progressive Voter Guide, and the other, the Council of Concerned Women Voters. But if we look closely at the addresses of the two organizations, first, the Feel the Burn Progressive Voter Guide, that's a little suspicious there, and the Council of Concerned Women Voters Legislative Guide, they have the same exact address in Long Beach, California. And lo and behold, neither are actual organizations. According to the California Secretary of State's CalAccess database, a yes on Prop 22 super PAC funded by the likes of Uber and Lyft are responsible for these mailers. This is super shady. For those who aren't familiar with Prop 22, it is a ballot initiative that would define app-based transportation and delivery drivers as independent contractors, which would obviously benefit companies like Uber and Lyft. I have an entire video dedicated to this, which I'll link in the description if you are interested. But yeah, you can't tell me that speech is free if one side has $184 million to blast misleading voter guides and the other side only has $10 million. So in practice, money doesn't so much enable speech as it does suppress speech from people who don't have access to that money. Now, the last thing I want to say on this is that no party, Republican or Democrat, is free of guilt. Take a look at this graphic put together by Open Secrets. $116 million in 2020 spending can be traced to party-aligned dark money groups, both Republicans and Democrats, with this giant web of special interest dark money trying to influence the vote. To me, that is not democracy. So circling back to my initial example from the Federalist Society, this is a thought I would like to end this video on today, is that sure, you might be able, as a technicality, argue that unlimited spending is protected by the First Amendment because it enables free speech. But by elevating some speech over other speech, specifically speech with big money backing, it's effectively silencing those who don't have access to that money. And if only a few are able to effectively express their speech, does the current interpretation of the US Constitution really protect our First Amendment right to free speech? I'll end with that question today. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think about money in politics. And if you have any thoughts on how to address this issue, because I think it's at the root of a lot of the problems that we see today. Anyway, every week I try to highlight a different topic, one that I feel is important or under-discussed or even completely ignored by the mainstream media. So if you enjoyed my video, please support my channel by liking and subscribing, but more importantly, sharing it with your friends and family so we can grow the 5149 community. My name is James Lee, and as usual, I'd like to end the video by thanking you for your time, and I'll see you next week.